Pride is the devil. Think it got a hold on me. Pride is the devil. And left so many R.I.P. Pride is the devil. Think it got a hold on me. Pride is the devil. Terrified, paranoid, I put you over everything to fill the void. And when you're gone, will I have anything or will I be destroyed? Terrified, paranoid, I put you over everything to fill the void. And when you're gone, will I have anything or will I be destroyed? Yeah. Bright lights pass me in the city, it's emergency. I'm thankful cause I made it past my 30s, no one murdered me. Still remember vividly the nigga that pulled a gun on me. I'm petrified but moving like I got no sense of urgency. Pride make a nigga act way harder than he really be. Pride hide the shame of sin, cut off all utilities. Pride hide the pain of growing up in hell and poverty. Pride make a nigga feel a way that you will follow me.
With the 4th pick in the 2012 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Dion Waiters of Syracuse University.
An emotional moment for Dion Waiters as Thomas Robinson continues to wait. Dion Waiters out of Syracuse didn't start a game last year. He joins Marvin Williams of North Carolina in 2005, the only lottery picks. Played in college, didn't start a single game. But look, Waiters got starters minutes. That's all semantics. He averaged 24 minutes a game. He was a big leader on Jim Boeheim's team. And now Dion Waiters. Times explode.
When the Cleveland Cavaliers selected Dion Waiters with the 4th pick in the 2012 NBA Draft, many were left scratching their heads. Not because they felt like Dion Waiters would be a terrible fit next to Kyrie Irving, the team's #1 overall pick from the season prior, but because they appeared to have reached to acquire him. Many media outlets, including Bleacher Report, would go on record stating that Waiters would have likely gone around the 7 to 10 range had the Cavs not taken him, and that they probably could have moved back a few spots and still walked away with him if they were truly that interested. This seemed like the consensus regarding Waiters. He skyrocketed up big boards after attending just a few tryouts and combines, which put him solidly into the lottery territory after previously being thought of as a possible late first-round pick. As the 2012 draft drew near, analysts appeared to view him as a potential top 10 pick, but not necessarily in the top 5. But what was even more telling was the fact that multiple mock drafts had the Cavs addressing perhaps their biggest problem area at the time, small forward, with the likes of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist or Harrison Barnes, who would have likely been a great fit with Cleveland. These felt like pretty safe assumptions at the time, and while MKG was selected 2nd by the Charlotte Bobcats, Barnes was still on the board by the time the Cavs were on the clock. If the Cavs intended on going the route of a 2-guard, the only player that would have made sense was Bradley Beal, who many believed to be the top guard in the class, and Cleveland reportedly had coveted Beal at the time. But unfortunately, the Washington Wizards snatched him up with the 3rd pick, pairing him with John Wall and creating one of the league's most dynamic backcourts at the time. All this did was reinforce the idea that Barnes was in fact going to be the guy. But as we all know, things rarely play out in such predictable fashion at this annual event. Barnes fell to the Golden State Warriors at 7 and would go on to carve out a pretty solid NBA career that includes multiple big-time paydays as well as an NBA title. Cleveland, on the other hand, would shake things up in a major way by pulling one of the biggest reaches in that draft by selecting Dion 4th overall. On the surface, pairing Waiters with Irving seemed like a natural fit, especially offensively speaking. After just one season, Kyrie was already considered to be one of the best up-and-comers in the league at that point, and Waiters was entering the NBA as an explosive scorer after a great season operating as Syracuse's 6th man. He was undersized for a combo guard, but was a relentless attacker when driving inside. He took 25.8% of his shots at the rim and converted over 51.5% of them. He had proven in his final season at Syracuse that he could be a respectable shooter, finishing his sophomore year with a 3-point percentage of 36.3% on 3.1 attempts. Numbers that were sure to carry over to the NBA level with Irving dishing and kicking out to him. Additionally, Waiters was seen as a good fit due to his ability to finish in transition, an area that the Cavaliers flat out struggled mightily with as they finished the prior season 25th in fast break points and 24th in fast break efficiency. Waiters, on the other hand, managed to convert 68.7% of his looks in transition. He also wasn't much of a playmaker, as evidenced by his lowly 2 assists per game mark in his final season at Cuse, but that wouldn't be so bothersome next to Irving. Defensively speaking, he had the requisite physical skills to become a lockdown defender at the NBA level, but needed to adjust to playing more man-to-man than ever before after playing mostly in the confines of a 2-3 zone at the collegiate level. He finished his sophomore season with the 13th best defensive rating in the Big East, as well as the 5th most steals per game in the conference. The talent was absolutely there, it just needed to be honed. Overall, it seemed like a decent fit. Now, our first real look at Waiters at the professional level came during the NBA's annual Summer League festivities, where the Syracuse product left a lot to be desired in terms of shooting numbers. In his 3 total appearances, he put up averages of 12.3 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. Not terrible by any stretch, but he complemented this by completing just 30% of his field goal attempts. He would go 12 of 40 overall, including just 1 of 6 on his attempts from 3-point range. 19 of his 40 shots came at the rim or in the restricted area, with the bad part being that he converted just 8 of those 19 shots. With all of that being the case, he still managed to display some of the skill that got him selected in the top 5, namely his ability to get to the rim, which he did with relative ease. Now don't get me wrong, the questionable shot selection, erratic drives, and limited range were all present, but you could clearly see the latent talent he had. Then came training camp, where Waiters appeared to be laser focused, dropping 10 pounds after reportedly participating in Summer League action out of shape. It appeared as if he was ready to hit the ground running come the start of the preseason. The Philly native even expressed his desire to lead the Cavs back into the playoffs and win Rookie of the Year in the process. The preseason played out very similar to his Summer League appearance, very up and down. His debut went well as he scored 11 points in just 15 minutes of action, helping the Cavs defeat Siena of the Italian League 91-85. In his next appearance, Waiters had 2 points, 3 assists, and 4 turnovers on 1 of 7 shooting from the field in 14 minutes as the Cavs lost 97-80 to the Milwaukee Bucks. Byron Scott was so frustrated with his performance that he benched him for the entire second half due to an apparent lack of focus. Waiters then rebounded and turned in his best performance of the preseason by scoring 18 points on 7 of 12 shooting, including 4 of 4 from 3-point range. He added 3 assists, though he did turn the ball over 4 times and only grabbed 1 rebound in 27 minutes. He then turned in another disheartening performance against 3rd overall pick Bradley Beal in the Washington Wizards, in which he scored just 4 total points on 2 of 9 from the field. Overall, Waiters was very inconsistent. He would have moments where you would clearly see his talent shining through, and he would have other moments in which he looked completely lost. He would wind up posting averages of 8.6 points, 2 rebounds, 2.1 assists, and a field goal percentage of 34.4%, including 35% from 3-point range. Not exactly what you want to see from a top 5 selection, but not quite damning enough to make one feel that he would end up being a regrettable pick. Waiters' regular season debut restored the faith as he scored 17 points on 6 of 14 from the field, including 2 of 5 from distance. He drove to the rim at will, showcased his ability to space the floor, as well as his on-ball skills as a defender, and appeared to mesh well with the rest of the Cavs starters, namely his backcourt running mate Kyrie Irving. It washed away the stink from both his summer league and preseason outings and left many believing that Waiters might actually be the type of player that Cleveland was hoping for. I know it did for me. The Syracuse product hit the double-digit mark in 6 of his first 10 games as a professional, which was highlighted by a 28-point outburst against the Los Angeles Clippers in which he knocked down 7 triples. He was absolutely unconscious from 3-point range, raining threes from all over the court in a breakout performance that saw both he and Kyrie combine for 52 total points. It seemed that the two could coexist after all, as both took turns handling the rock. Waiters flashed his potential as a catch-and-shoot threat, with Irving threading the needle to find him, often proving that Waiters was not only a threat to pull up on you, but he could also operate off-ball. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. For every big-time scoring affair Waiters put on tape, there were equally frustrating low-efficiency, low-scoring eggs being laid as well. It was uncanny. There were nights when he looked like one of the brightest young stars in the game, and others where he looked completely out of his depth. This was the case almost immediately, and was a pattern for most of his rookie campaign, and led to some very ugly shooting percentages early on. In his first 10 games, Waiters scored 13.7 points per game on 38.8% from the floor. In his next 10, 15.3 points per game on a truly worrisome 34.1%. And while he would slowly start to bring those percentages up as his rookie season wore on, there were far too many instances of his questionable shot selection rearing its ugly head. Even with that being the case, Waiters displayed enough to receive an invite to the 2012 NBA Rising Stars Challenge, where he dazzled the audience to the tune of 23 points alongside Kyrie Irving and Tyler Zeller.
Brandon Wright tried to get it to Vucevic.
Off the glass.
Off the glass to Dion Waiters.
You have to love this. Guards have to know in an all-star game, when somebody trails you, if you're not going to dunk spectacularly, throw it off the glass, give the kids at home something to ooh and ah over.
Just dunk that last one for Reed. That's my choice.
Dion Waiters.
Although just an exhibition, this performance became sort of a springboard for him. In his 16 games post-All-Star break, Waiters averaged 16.1 points per game on a much more efficient 45.8% from the field. He still struggled with his perimeter shot, but he continued to show that the shot creation was indeed real. So was the confidence, even if it tended to hurt him more often than not. The long ball may not have been falling, but he was efficient when attacking the basket, especially when attempting shots from within 5 feet of the basket. 314 of his 815 total field goal attempts came from inside 5 feet. His 5.1 attempts per game led all rookies that season. He managed to complete over 50.3% of these looks. Overall, his rookie season was filled with multiple ups and downs. Some forgettable lows, but also came with some really memorable highs. He would finish his rookie season with averages of 14.7 points, 2.4 boards, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 41.2% from the floor, including 31% from distance. Waiters was second to Damian Lillard in scoring and finished 5th overall in Rookie of the Year voting. He was also rated the 4th best overall rookie by NBA.com and received all rookie first team honors. A solid, albeit inconsistent first year. He proved that he could indeed score at the NBA level, however inefficient he was prone to being. He showed that he had some work to do as a facilitator, as he averaged just 3 assists per game, but he did finish the season ranked within the 87th percentile among wings with an assist percentage of 17.8%. But for a player that also ranked in the 96th percentile in usage rate at 26.8%, you would think that he would have dished out more assists. Waiters also had a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball, as he allowed 111 points per 100 possessions in year 1. Now, heading into the 2013-2014 offseason period, the areas of his game that needed work were pretty clear. Become more efficient as a scorer, become a more willing passer, step up his defensive effort, and perhaps last but certainly not least, come back better conditioned. And to that last point, while there were concerns over his conditioning, no one really questioned his work ethic. Waiters appeared to take his offseason workout programs very seriously. There were numerous videos alluding to that, and the second-year pro looked a hell of a lot slimmer. Dude just looked cut. In interviews, he talked about the work that he put in on his overall bounce, specifically in regards to his shots. Things were very much looking up for him. The results were speaking for themselves, and although he didn't necessarily need to be there after making all-rookie first team, when that all-season summer league rolled around, Waiters participated. He struggled in game 1, putting up just 3 points on 1 of 11 from the field, but he did turn things around nicely by scoring no less than 16 points in each of the 3 games that followed, which was highlighted by his masterful 27-point outburst against the San Antonio Spurs, where he completed 12 of his 23 total attempts. He relentlessly attacked off the dribble, getting all the way to the basket or earning his way to the free throw line. When defenders closed off his driving lanes, he poured in pull-up jumpers or worked off the ball for efficient spot-up looks. He looked unstoppable. That same offseason, the Cavs drafted Anthony Bennett #1 overall, a raw big man with seemingly loads of offensive potential. They also brought in former All-Star big man Andrew Bynum, signed both 6th Man of the Year candidate Jarrett Jack and Earl Clark, and made a coaching change, bringing back Mike Brown after Byron Scott was let go after 3 miserable seasons at the helm, compiling a record of just 64 and 166, which was the lowest winning percentage in the team's history up to that point. This was good news for Waiters, as Brown would bring accountability to the table, especially on the defensive end where Waiters needed the most work. Brown was unafraid to show Waiters some tough love, but let him know that he was still a big believer in the talent that he had. That message of accountability seemed to have sunk in early on. He appeared to be a fan of Brown, even going as far as to say, "I love the way he coaches me," while adding that he appreciates the times Brown has pulled him from games for a teachable moment before sending him back out onto the floor. Waiters didn't have the most efficient preseason, averaging just 10.4 points while completing 40.8% of his attempts, but he did manage to complete over 42.9% of his three-point attempts. His 21-point outing against the Orlando Magic showed that he was indeed ready for year 2 as he scored at will inside. The hype surrounding his second season was pretty damn high in Cleveland, as fans and analysts alike thought he was primed for a breakout, and honestly, you could not blame them for feeling this way. His sophomore season got off to a rocky start as he would average just 13.1 points, 3.1 rebounds, and 2.3 assists, along with a lowly field goal percentage of 37.4% through his first 10 games. But even with that being the case, he was still doing some of the things that he wasn't the prior season, namely his outside shot. Over that same 10-game stretch, he knocked down 38.7% of his triples, including an absolutely absurd 45.5% on catch and shoot attempts. He was playing his part off ball very, very well. The problem was that Waiters was struggling to finish inside. He was completing just 38.5% of his attempts from within 8 feet of the rim on a sample size of 25 of 65 over that span. He just wasn't getting the job done in that regard. Waiters was still prone to driving aimlessly towards the basket without a real plan on what he'd do. He put the ball in a very blockable position far too often and wasn't absorbing contact like he probably should have been, instead preferring acrobatic layups and body contorts to try and finish. He was getting to the rim but just wasn't finishing. He would finish in the top 30 in the NBA in drives per game that year. But while he got off to that slow start, Waiters would soon begin to elevate his level of play on the offensive side of the ball. He followed that 10-game stretch up with another 10-game stretch in which he averaged 15.5 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 2.7 assists while completing over 46.7% of his shot attempts, including a steady 36.7% from three-point range, and then again increased his points per game up to 16.7 in the following 10-game increment. Some may have taken issue with his 41.4% field goal percentage, but considering that both he and Kyrie were the focal points of the offense and were getting most of the defense's attention, I didn't hold it against him. He was still improving offensively to that point. And then his production dipped to 11.8 points and 2.6 assists, with his field goal percentage dipping to 39.3%. This was the way it went for Waiters, and what made his time in Cleveland so damn irritating. He would have cool streaks followed by stretches in which he couldn't miss. Waiters was maddeningly inconsistent. This, combined with periods of defensive ineptitude and focus, are what made the public opinion of him a constant balancing act. Still, he was undeniably talented, and we continue to get glimpses of that throughout his sophomore year. Perhaps the most memorable came outside the confines of a regular season game altogether, but rather the NBA's annual Rising Stars Challenge, a festivity that he participated in the year prior, but turned it up to another level in 2013. The second-year guard dazzled and drew oohs and ahs as he went back and forth with New York's Tim Hardaway Jr. in one of the most memorable sequences in recent history at one point during the challenge.
Tim Hardaway Jr. showing off here a little early. And Waiters goes it for Dion Waiters. You can see, I guess, the apple doesn't fall far. I like this kid. I really like his game. Knocks down the three. Dion Waiters knocks down the jumper. And Waiters has gotten aggressive here. That's his first three-pointer of the night.
Right back
Hardaway
at him.
looking to answer, and he does.
There we go. It's about to be a game, gentlemen. It's about to be a game.
Fourth three of the night for Tim Hardaway Jr., who has 25. Waiters got it.
It's about to be a game. Watch him come back, though. Here we go. Green light. Green light. I said green light.
Oh, my God. This is crazy.
He gets a little dance from Kevin Durant.
Durant, Harden, they all love it. It's a one-on-one game breaking out. What a back and forth between Dion Waiters and Tim Hardaway Jr. Waiters has now scored Team Hill's last 14 points. Modern game with about 3.5 to go. Hardaway will try to add to that total, and he does. Tim Hardaway Jr. is out of his mind tonight.
He thinks he's in New York. He thinks he's in Madison Square Garden right now.
7 made threes, 34 points. I think Coach Mike Woodson needs to run some more plays for him.
Exactly. Well, you know how New York is. They're going to call for him to start every minute after this game.
Anything you can do. 62 combined points for Waiters and Hardaway. And Waiters has it again, and he'll try another and hit another. And as Dion Waiters walked past us, he declared, "This is my city."
And just like the season prior, Waiters used this performance as a springboard that would kick off a major production hike in the second half of that season. In the 22 games he appeared in post-All-Star, the Philly native would put up averages of 19.3 points, 2.6 boards, and 3.7 assists while increasing his shooting splits across the board. He shot 46% from the floor overall, 37.9% from distance, and 71.4% from the charity stripe, all of which combined for a true shooting percentage of 53.5%. Progress was seemingly being made. The problem was, it still, and I mean still, only resulted in a 33-49 record for the Cavaliers. Not quite the season the Cleveland-based franchise had envisioned after making all of those moves in the offseason and bringing back Mike Brown. This resulted in Brown being fired for the second time in 5 years by Cleveland. There were numerous reports at the time that the Cavs' young core just did not buy into Brown's defense-first philosophy. This came in addition to the leaked reports of turmoil in the locker room that he failed to gain control of, namely that of Dion Waiters himself, who was rumored to have been shopped by Cleveland at that time. Friction between he, Irving, Tristan Thompson, and several others had begun to occur after a players-only meeting called by Irving led to Waiters accusing Irving and Thompson of playing buddy ball and freezing him out of the offense. And to top it all off, Chris Grant, the GM who had taken Waiters in the 2012 draft, had been let go of midseason as well. There were officially beginning to be signs of his future not looking so wine and gold heading into the offseason. Things only got murkier after LeBron James announced his return to the team after 4 seasons away in Miami and the acquisition of Kevin Love, whom the team traded their last 2 #1 overall picks in Anthony Bennett and Andrew Wiggins to acquire. This was one of the busiest off seasons in Cavs history as Kyrie and Anderson Varejao were signed to contract extensions, Shawn Marion was signed, and should be mentioned that this started the trend of LeBron bringing some of his old pals to town with him. Mike Miller and James Jones joined the squad as well. Simply put, the Cavs went from a fringe playoff team to a bona fide championship contender overnight. The battle for rotation minutes was about to become a fierce one. Upon all of the changes made to the roster going into the 2014-2015 season, Dion Waiters was put into a weird position. He was about to go from a sidekick to Kyrie and second option offensively to 4th in the offensive pecking order. This must have been a complicated pill to swallow for Waiters, as he had free reign over the basketball, averaging 13.8 field goal attempts over his first 2 years. He wasn't about to fade away into basketball abyss or anything, but his hopes of becoming a superstar were going to be put on hold. Still though, it wasn't as if he wasn't being afforded a pretty great opportunity, all things considered. It's not every day that you get to play alongside the best player in the NBA. He would just have to adjust his mindset along with his role. I think many, including myself, were optimistic about the possibilities for him playing with such a talented core, but all of that hinged on Waiters' willingness to accept a complimentary role, something that didn't exactly seem like a sure thing. I mean, just the season prior, he ranked 13th overall in usage rate among shooting guards. But even he admitted there would be something of a learning curve with LBJ around, stating, "I like to have the ball, and we have Kyrie, and he likes to have the ball. So I have to find ways to impact the game without having the ball. I'm planning to go watch tape to see what D-Wade did when he played with LeBron. I need to learn how to be effective out there with him. I think it's good for me at the end of the day, because I can prove to people I can do things other than just score. I need to go play the right way, listen to LeBron, and be a sponge and try and soak up what he's going to tell me." He knew that although he might get fewer touches, he would probably see more quality touches, clean looks, and transition buckets facilitated by LeBron in one way or another. It sounded like he was ready to accept a different role, but for a player with as much confidence in himself as Dion, that would need to be proven on the court. Things did not get off to a great start for him. Waiters would see just 3 starts for this new-look Cavs team before ultimately being moved to the bench. The 3rd time in his career that he'd been moved to the bench by a head coach, this time coming via David Blatt. In those 3 games, he put up averages of just 8.3 points, 1.3 boards, and 1 assist while completing just 33.3% of his total field goals. He wasn't just struggling to adjust to his new role, one in which he had to operate more off-ball than ever, he was struggling to knock down any of his shots. The move to the bench didn't appear to help things much either. Waiters averaged 10.7 points and 2.4 assists while converting on a lowly 41% from the field, including just 24.7% of his triples as a reserve. He was floundering, and the Cavs could see it. The crazy part is, he was getting quality looks for the most part. The 2014-15 season would wind up being the least productive of his tenure in Cleveland. Waiters made just 33 total appearances for Cleveland that season before being shopped and ultimately moved in a 3-team trade that saw the arrival of J.R. Smith and Amon Shumpert, 2 players who would go on to play huge roles in bringing Cleveland its first championship. This deal was a no-brainer for the Cavaliers. Waiters was harming Cleveland's offense when he was on the floor, and his defensive woes were overshadowing his offensive skill set. On a personal level, I thought that he'd be able to make the transition successfully and become a leading 6th Man of the Year candidate, or at the very least a knockdown spot-up shooter. Neither of these things happened. He did not acclimate well to his newfound role and couldn't knock down a triple to save his life. Waiters shot just 25.6% from 3-point range before being moved and 40.4% overall for Cleveland that year, both career lows. The Cavs had to pull the plug, and honestly, I'm glad they did. They put an end to a tenure that was chock full of wasted potential. Since then, Waiters' career has stalled out. He would play just one more season with the Thunder before moving on to the Miami Heat, where he would continuously find himself in trouble off the court. He would last suit up for the Los Angeles Lakers, where he would win a title in the bubble alongside guess who? LeBron James and J.R. Smith. The NBA can be a funny place like that. At the end of the day, the Dion Waiters era was a rocky, turbulent, sometimes fun time to be a Cavs fan. He would tantalize with his raw ability to get to the paint at will and score inside. He would also frustrate at other times due to his constant pining for the basketball and refusal to go all in defensively. In many ways, he was doomed to fail from the start due to the wonky fit alongside Kyrie Irving, but in other ways, he gave us hope in an otherwise bleak world as a Cleveland fan after the first departure of LeBron. Man, what a time to be alive.